Truth is that nobody has disputed until now the evidence in the Sue Gray report. Forget who presented the evidence, Sue Gray, or the Metropolitan Police for that matter. But look at the evidence itself. Nobody's disputed it. Everybody accepts the parties took place. Everybody accepted the report at the time that it was published. And only now, months later, are they trying to fight a rearguard action, discrediting the author of the report. And in football terms, that's clearly playing the man, or in this case, the woman, rather than the ball.
Allies of Boris Johnson have been spending the weekend trying to undermine Sue Gray's report into his lockdown-breaking parties and suggesting that the Privileges Committee report is, in the words of the MP Paul Bristow, ludicrous.
Let's try and understand what's happening here. We've got a Privileges Committee which is taking a view, producing a report, which is based in part on the evidence from Sue Gray, a woman who's just now gone to work for the leader of the opposition. I mean, this would be laughable if it wasn't so serious. And this, as I say, in part led to the downfall of a prime minister that was elected with an 80-seat majority, a mandate to change this country. I mean, it's ludicrous if it wasn't so serious.
Well, the former head of the civil service, Bob Kerslake, told Times Radio earlier that the report appears to be pretty damning.
They've found new evidence, new photos to back up their arguments. And I think the fact that Parliament was misled is absolutely clear from them. His only defence is that he didn't do it intentionally, that when he said it, he thought it was true. That's his only real defence on this.
So Bob Kerslake. Well, as well as that, the latest batch of Matt Hancock's WhatsApp messages are out. Ding, ding, ding. It's WhatsApp time. They reveal that one of his advisors described Dominic Cummings as a psychopath, and that the then-Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, said that Mr Cummings' time in Downing Street was a nightmare. Let's cut through some of the noise on this and the commentary from Professor Colin Talbot. He is Professor Emeritus of Government at the University of Manchester. Colin, hello, good evening.
Hello, Darryl. How are you?
I'm really well. Thank you for being with us. Let's start with Boris Johnson. He's on the front pages of quite a few of the papers again on Sunday, which is just the way that he likes it. Front page of the Observer, though, say that he has gone full Trump. Tories turn on Johnson over Partygate, with sort of conflicting bits of commentary from Tory MPs this weekend. Some of them condemning him, some of them, like Paul Bristow earlier, saying that the issue around Sue Gray undermines the report. Where are we really?
Well, I think describing it as full Trump is probably about right. It's on a par with Trump's Stop the Steal campaign about trying to pretend that he didn't lose the presidential election. The truth is that nobody has disputed until now the evidence in the Sue Gray report. Forget who presented the evidence, Sue Gray, or the Metropolitan Police for that matter. But look at the evidence itself. Nobody's disputed it. Everybody accepts the parties took place. Everybody accepted the report at the time that it was published. And only now, months later, are they trying to fight a rearguard action, discrediting the author of the report. And in football terms, that's clearly playing the man, or in this case, the woman, rather than the ball.
And obviously at the heart of this is the fact that Sue Gray has, it seems, as we understand it, accepted a job to be Keir Starmer's chief of staff. Is there anything in the validity of the argument, or any validity in the argument in your mind, Colin, that this appointment is unreasonable?
Well, we'll find out there's a body called ACOBA, which is the Advisory Committee on Business Appointments, which looks at these sorts of appointments and says whether or not they are breaking the rules. And she's submitted herself to that process to find out whether or not it is acceptable. But certainly my reading of all of the rules surrounding the civil service and the Privileges Committee report is that there doesn't appear to be any rule breaking going on here at all. We've had recently, in the not too distant past, other people who have left senior civil service roles or diplomatic service roles in one case. I'll give you two examples. One from the Tory side, Lord Frost now, David Frost, was a diplomat, left, went to work for somebody else, then came back as a specialist advisor to Boris Johnson when he was Foreign Secretary, and then eventually became appointed as a minister in the House of Lords by Boris Johnson. Again, somebody from the diplomatic service. And on the other side of the argument, Bob Kerslake, who you just mentioned, who was the head of the civil service, he's not exactly joined the Labour Party, but he's advised both Jeremy Corbyn and Keir Starmer on various aspects of policy. And nobody's jumped up and down about either of those particularly. So no, it's not that unusual for former civil servants to go into some sort of role in politics, not so much as politicians themselves, but obviously advisory roles.
Kevin's just messaged. You can get in touch tonight if you like at 87222, or as I keep being told to describe it, 87222. Sorry, I keep getting that wrong. 87222, with times at the beginning of a message. Kevin says, worth remembering that Boris Johnson at the time said that the report had vindicated him. So is he now undermining his own vindication?
Well, yes, quite. If there was any criticism of the report, the Sue Gray report at the time, it actually came from people who were quite sceptical. She's a career civil servant, and the job of the career civil service is to protect the government of the day, and he was the Prime Minister of the day. And if anything, the criticism of the report that came out at the time, the only criticisms came from people who were sceptical that she'd actually done a thorough job. For example, she decided not to investigate the so-called ABBA party in the number 10 flat, which quite clear evidence took place, and she decided it wasn't worth investigating.
Yeah. The drip, 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 Colin, of WhatsApp messages continues. The front page of the next day's Telegraph, of tomorrow's Telegraph, which we'll consider after 10:30 in our newspapers panel. We'll have a look at exactly what these things are saying. But what we know so far is that Dominic Cummings has been described as a psychopath by one of Matt Hancock's aides. We've also seen some messages between Matt Hancock and the then Chancellor Rishi Sunak describing that time in Downing Street as a nightmare. What do you feel that we're learning through all of this, Colin?
Well, I think we are learning some detail about the attitudes of the people who were involved. I mean, the idea that Dominic Cummings is described as a psychopath isn't anything particularly new, because David Cameron had actually described him as a career psychopath before. But what is new is some of the cynicism that's coming out in the exchanges, the tone of the exchanges, and the factual information. So, for example, one of the revelations in the last few hours has been that there was a discussion between Matt Hancock and Simon Case, the Cabinet Secretary, in which Hancock pointed out that the Eat Out to Help Out scheme was actually causing problems in areas of high COVID problems. Case said, "Oh, don't worry about it. Rishi hasn't got the money to continue the programme," and Hancock made it clear that he thought that was a good thing, but that he'd managed to keep it out of the newspapers that it was causing problems in those areas. I mean, it's just the level of cynicism involved in this is just quite astonishing.
Okay, Colin, thank you for your time tonight. Really appreciate your insights. Really nice to have you with us. That is Professor Colin Talbot, who is Professor Emeritus of Government at the University of Manchester. Any more revelations over the course of the next 10, 15